I'm happy to help welcome all of you to Mount San Antonio Gardens for our program. I just want to give you an update. Last year, thanks to all of your generosity, we were able to award $6,800 in scholarships to art students, to scholarship funds at Scripps College, to Claremont Lewis Museum of Art for Art Start, and for Williamson Gallery for exhibition expenses, which was our wonderful program about the Ramos Martinez mural at Margaret Flower Garden last month. And now I would like to introduce Elaine Turner, who will introduce our speaker today.
This is going to be a really special day. Jeff Faust's work is big, bold, and graphic. Growing up in Claremont, he has been painting since he was in grade school. And at an early age, his subtle surrealism approach appeared. In his words, "I never had anyone tell me how to paint, which is the way I wanted it." Jeff's art education came from looking through and reading books in his father's art library, as well as a 3-month trip to England after graduating Claremont High. Upon his return from overseas, he spent some time exploring the United States. Fun side note, his parents supplied him with art supplies via Greyhound bus when he was traveling around the States. His works are represented by 6 galleries, and we are fortunate that one of his pieces, thanks to Jeff's generosity, has been included in the permanent collection of our own Claremont Lewis Museum of Art. Jeff now makes his home in the Bay Area with his wife, Jan. So please turn off your phones and help me welcome Jeff Faust.
Well, I'm going to show you a selection of paintings from various stages of my work. Most of them will have leaves in them. You'll see a number of spheres, bowls. The word haiku will appear quite a bit. I often compare my work to poems or music and writings. And the Eucalyptus started a long time ago because as a kid growing up in Claremont, all I saw blowing across my field of vision would be eucalyptus leaves. So I decided that they would work with the work I was doing. Here's a selection of 5 paintings. They're the silent poem series that was done about 15 years ago. Just again, my love for the movement of leaves and what I was trying to incorporate. The leaves just work so well. They're sculptural in so many ways, and they can just say things to me that were very important, and in fact, a bit of a spiritual sense that I've always followed with the work. And the quietness. I love quiet. I get really annoyed with a lot of human noise, which we are all faced with these days. But I found quiet in the leaves. And they have been incorporated into, boy, I don't know if I can find a painting that doesn't have a leaf in it. We'll see. There might be one coming up. And I have always gone for the simplicity. I really like simple things. And as I've aged with the work, the simplicity has gotten more and more refined and even stronger. My early works were very chaotic and sort of busy, but I was young and I was exploring. And that brings me to that point about why I never wanted to have instruction. I was having a remarkable discovery on realizing how I was looking at things and wanting them to wanting to put those into an artistic setting, just everyday things. And I realized it felt very gratifying, very satisfying, and I couldn't imagine going on to an art school and be told that perhaps I was doing something wrong, I might want to do this, why don't I think about that? I just didn't want any interference from any other person with my work. And that has never diminished. I thank the art gods quite frequently that I stuck to that, because everything I have in my work is my own. This has an interesting story to it. This was done about 6 or 7 years ago. I woke up one morning to an email from a Parisian publishing house. And they wanted to know if they could put this piece on a book of poetry they were publishing. The poet was a Haitian archaeologist. Very subtly surreal right there. So, over my second cup of coffee, I was able to arrange getting them a high-res image. I gave them the tracking number to my account, and by the third cup of coffee in the morning, it had been a done deal. And you just never know what the art will bring you. That was just a wonderful little episode. But this was, the ginkgo leaves have started to almost take over the eucalyptus leaves in the work. I find there's great joy in the ginkgo leaves and things I can't describe. They're just very meaningful to me. So they've made quite an appearance. And along with, I used to just use, and you'll see there will be examples of just nothing but eucalyptus leaves. But that has been changing in the last 6 or 7 years, where I've been mixing it up a bit. Now, I don't use exclusively a painting has to have leaves in it, but I'm finding that it's so satisfying, and they work so well for me that they do appear a majority of the times. I've also started to do these wonderful sort of vertical still lifes. And I have found that they are very satisfying to me. The nests, you'll see a lot of nests in these pictures with the ascension of the eggs. That became a theme that I started several years back, and I am using that quite a bit too. I mean, this is sort of a self-portrait. You've got the spheres and the leaves and the nests and the clouds, which pretty much sums up a lot of my work. And small bowls. I love bowls. And again, trying to figure out why. Well, I don't spend too much time trying to analyze these. I just do them and let them go. But this will be a recurring theme throughout the pieces this morning. I've got allergies, folks. I've got to keep drinking water. My throat's going to give out. I think coming down I-5 on Sunday, I picked up a whole bunch of new pollen friends, and they've stuck around. Along with deciding that I didn't want any academic instruction or other people interfering with my direction, at a fairly young age, I decided that galleries were going to be very important to me, because I spent a lot of years being a salesman of my own work. And God damn, that was horrible. I just really was not comfortable with that. And the stress involved in that really was harmful to a lot of things. I wanted other people who cared about the work to sell it. And I've been active in galleries now for many, many decades. There have been some real dog galleries out there, and I've been in a number of them. Oh my God, just horrible things. But at the same time, I was learning all about how galleries work. And for the last many years, except for a few cases that I can talk about, the gallery life is just great for me. I spend all my time now working, and I've got just on my work without having to think about the other side of it, that selling, making income from it. There are people out there who do that for me, and much better than I could ever do. So I have been a gallery person for, 30 years, right in there somewhere. And my galleries are, right now, they're incredibly good. They're just wonderful people. And I trust them completely with what I am doing. And they trust me. It's a really good relationship I have. The accidental stray. Now that color, that's getting better. Again, the little ginkgo leaves up there. This is just, I like vessels, just as I like bowls. I like what older vessels can say. And they appear, again, with some frequency in the work. There's a sense of the aged that I really like, the ancient wisdom, the way ancients lived. It all is very meaningful to me. And when I start a painting, I truly rarely know what's going to happen. Sometimes I just have to start putting paint on a canvas to figure out where I'm going to go with it. But I love designing the old vessels, and I love incorporating like the imagery across the body of it. It all comes together for me, and like each piece has to work, because if it doesn't work for me, it won't work for others. But the vessels have been with me for many decades now. And of course, the birds have been companions of mine for a very long time. I remember Jan and I were living down on Annapolis. Jan was a middle school science teacher for many years. And I was working on a painting one day, and I said, Jan, do you have any bird's nests? She said, yeah, they're out in the garage. Just go get one. So Jan has always been a wealth of information and objects for me because of her science teachings. Shells, feathers, sand dollars. I love sand dollars. Good Lord. Old dried up sand dollars you find on the beach. So Jan has been she's been the partner through all of this, and because of all her wonderful supplies, among other things. I mean, come on, you know what I mean. This is a recent painting. You can find a lot of these images on the website, or I do use social media. I use Instagram and Facebook primarily for posting new work. And boy, that brings up another interesting point. In the last, especially since the first COVID years, the web has become a real viable selling tool. My galleries all belong to a site that's for galleries called Artsy. It's not for artists to showcase their work, it's for the galleries. And more and more and more, the galleries are selling through Artsy or through their own websites. But it's done a dramatic turn on opening up an audience. And I have benefited greatly from the technology of the internet. Yeah, in fact, there was about a month ago, I sold 3 paintings from 3 different galleries, and it was all through the Artsy site. And again, my galleries are very in tune, in step with all of that. I am not, but they are to my benefit. And it was during the COVID years where galleries had to either adapt or they really had a horrible struggle. A lot of galleries had to close during those early COVID years. But those that survived were all of a sudden having to display and reach out over the internet. Now, I will always contact a gallery before I have a painting professionally photographed, and give them the option of either accepting the painting or not. Usually they do. A couple times the galleries have said, well, it might not work for us. But there have been times when I have posted a painting after choosing a gallery to send it to, and it will sell before it even leaves the studio. It's just a whole different new world out there, and it's an interesting juggle. But again, it opens up a lot of fresh avenues for sales, which allow me to continue to paint all the time, which I love more than anything else. These little paper birds have started to appear. I first did those on the wedding announcement for Jan and myself back in '81, long time ago. And they stayed hidden for a long time, but you'll see a couple more images coming up where I use the paper birds, and again, I just love whatever they mean. I'm not sure what it is, but I love the idea of sort of the puppetry of the paper birds. Arrangement for cello and bird song. I was in a gallery for a number of years that was doing very well for me. They were in Milwaukee, and they had another gallery in Rhode Island. And I had a director of the gallery in Milwaukee who was a wonderful young woman, a bit fragile in her health and her mental state, but she was a remarkable, remarkable person. Somehow the owner of the gallery did something that was highly inappropriate, and the director had just left the gallery. She just didn't want to be there anymore, and it was a big red flag for me. I just could not deal with what had happened to her, so I told the gallery I was leaving them. It happens sometimes. It happened recently, but I'll tell you about it in a while. This painting and 2 others were left in the gallery, so I had them send these down to my Atlanta gallery. And this painting and several others sold out of Atlanta. But I was really discouraged by the actions of the gallery owner, and it's hard for me. I'm a very emotional person. I lead with my heart and what my gut tells me, and what happened at the gallery. Even though they'd been so great to me for all these years, I just didn't want to be there anymore. And the director, the new director, or the director, she was assistant director, and then when Emma left, she became the director. She then had to deal with these red flags that were going up, and she gave notice and also left the gallery. So it was a time for Kim to then open up her gallery in Milwaukee, and I went with her. I stayed with a presence in Milwaukee in a whole new gallery, and I feel, it's wonderful. I just didn't want to be with the old gallery. But this was one of the pieces that ended up being removed. But it had a wonderful acceptance down in Atlanta and sold pretty quickly down there. There's a lot of stories, when you have 6 galleries, things come and go. Now I have 6 galleries. They're all female-owned and or operated, except the Palm Desert Gallery, Coda Gallery, is owned by a male, but the gallerists are all females, and the director now is a wonderful young woman who, at 45, started working at the gallery when she was 19. And I really like having my art in these female-owned galleries. There's something that just really works out right for me and my way of thinking and how they feel about the work. Now, there are the birds again. Arrangement in Blue sold out of the Atlanta gallery pretty quickly. It wasn't there very long. The sort of altar-like setting is something I use a lot. It's a presentation thing for me that I'm very comfortable with. I like the idea of an altar. I'm not a religious person by any means, but I like sort of the trappings of perhaps a sacred cloth, just an area designated for a still life. It just is a nice setting for me and how I feel about the work and the imagery. So altars, or that type of what I think of as an altar, is very prominent in the work. Arriving Winds. A lot of my work, not so much anymore, but in the past has been just this type of a feel, the wonderful eucalyptus trees. I love the height, the bird. It's a very simple painting, but yet it says a lot for me. And it's at 60 by 48. It's a real powerful image, but also for me there's a tremendous sense of calm, even though there's this height in there. This was in a gallery I was in for quite a while up in the Bay Area in Corte Madera. Another great gallery that finally, just because of certain things in the owners' lives, had to fold. But they did very well for me. There's a magazine in Marin County called Marin Magazine. It's sort of a high-end high-end magazine for Marin and the surrounding areas. A lot of sort of wine stuff, that kind of a magazine. But they gave me, over the years, they had given me about 5 covers. They just picked out work that they liked of mine and put them on the cover. It was a very a nice gesture on their part. And my gallery, without my knowledge, which was fine, had entered this in a contest. And the first prize was getting your painting on the cover of Marin magazines. Oh boy! So I won, and I got another cover on Marin magazine. I know. Yeah, but again, you never know what's going to happen. Every day is a mystery. The 2 Ascending Gently paintings. There's another story here. I have a gallery in Natchez, Mississippi. Wonderful woman, Stacy Conde, shows a lot of Central American, Cuban artists. She said, she contacted me one day and said a woman had walked into her gallery, sort of distraught, and I had nothing going in the South, in that part of the southern states. A woman walked in and just asked her outright, "Do you know Jeff Faust?" She said, "No, sorry, I don't." Just out of the blue. Well, the woman had seen one of my paintings, and it's coming up somewhere here. She had seen one of my paintings, had passed on buying it at the time, and then realized she absolutely had to have it. But she could not remember where she had seen it. And Stacy said she was a tad distraught. But she had a photograph of it on her phone. So Stacy Googled me, came up with my website, and emailed me, because my email is on there, explained the situation, and I said, yes, I have, that painting is available, it's in Milwaukee. And so I contacted that gallery, I put them together, they worked it out, the woman got her painting, the 2 galleries split the commission, and I got my share. So, it was a 4-way win, but it was and then Stacy got back to me and said, Jeff, boy, would you ever consider showing here in Natchez, Mississippi? And I, at that point, looked at her website and thought, wow, this is interesting. Yeah, let's give it a shot. It's always when galleries contact me, if I'm able and have time or space in my art life, we can start something on a very small basis. So Stacy and I started, and she sold work, and I've been with her now for quite a few years. And it's been a really lovely, another good gallery experience for me. But she took these 2, and she placed them. They ended up in Texas in a residence. The folks did a beautiful job of framing them and presenting them. So, ever onward. But again, the nests. There's another one. This is an early ascension. It goes back quite a ways. It's got all the elements that I use so often. But again, 60 by 48. It's a commanding size. It's hard for me to work too small. I don't do small paintings. I like the impact and the imagery, how the imagery looks when it's large. So the smallest I do now are like 48 by 36. In fact, there's a stack of them in the car out in the parking lot that I'll be taking back home with me. I've done numerous birds on ropes or lines in the sky. Just very soothing for me. There's a real sense of accomplishment and fulfillment with my work for me in general, but these have special meaning. They're not attempting to tell a big story. They're not trying to do much except offer what they are. And I love looking at birds, just looking at things. And it's a really strong part of what I produce. I started doing bird boats a long time ago. Along with boats, I have a couple boats coming up, predating the bird boats. The structural ones like this, I've done all my life, or my adult life, boats made out of eucalyptus leaves and sails made out of big feathers. In fact, there's Jan again. She had a subscription years ago to Discover magazine. A nice a science magazine for the general public. And there was this, I looked at one issue and there's this cutaway view of an old ship or small ship that used to ply the Mediterranean. And right away I looked at it and went, oh my God, that could be made out of leaves. And those sails, they could be, I can picture. And Jan was in the next room. She's always close by when I have these great epiphanies. But I created some paintings right away based on that, and those have been a deep part of my work. Then I started to build the boats out of actual chunks of living wood, and there have been quite a few of these. Again, I don't know how to define it, just like I can't define a lot of my work, but it's just, again, the imagery. The imagery I just find deeply, deeply satisfying. And I don't know if it answers any questions for me, but it doesn't need to. It's just there. And yeah, these have been around quite a while. Four slender sticks. Pomegranates have played a big part in my life, and there's a bowl, the idea of a bowl made of leaves. Pomegranates I find they're remarkable to paint. They're just so, it comes down to the point where they're just so fun to paint. Again, it's sort of like a self-portrait, It's got the nest and the eggs. They're not ascending though. And the leaves starting to get away from just eucalyptus into various other things. I'll take a walk. We live in a semi-rural area, and I take a morning walk and go by places where there's alpacas and goats and all sorts of wonderful things. A lot of trees, a lot of different kinds of leaves. And I always come back with pockets full of leaves. I got bags of them in my studio, just tucked away, that I pull out sometimes when I need them. Just an ongoing, an ongoing story in this little language I've developed with all this imagery. I do think of the parts of these as just part of a language I've developed. I'm very comfortable with it. I like the English language with so many letters, only so many, and you can say so much with it. I just feel like I could, I've got another 17 years of lifetime 17 lifetimes of work I'd like to have just to satisfy all this. But I do what I can, with what I've got now. Not too long ago, I started to do paintings with just an old stick as the stage. I love the idea of a performance on just a stick. There'll be a lot more paintings like this coming along. I've done a few, and it's just, it's a stage, since I think of my work oftentimes in the theatrical or the written, it's also highly visual for me, that it sort of makes sense. And it lends itself to a variety of variations. Pears are also like pomegranates. Pears are wonderful to paint. And a while ago, hummingbirds sort of introduced themselves to my work. I like them in there as just an innocent bystander in the visual, and like the leaves blowing across the view in the painting, hummingbirds just, goddamn, they just round out things so much that it's just a little touch that transforms an image from one thing into a much deeper image for me. Hummingbirds perch in all sorts of my work now. For some reason, like a lot of people, I guess, when you see a hummingbird just alight on a branch or something, you want to look at it. It feels good. At least it does to me. Okay, there's lemons. Lemons are fun to paint too. All this stuff is fun to paint. I hope that comes across okay. This is called Landfall. Very simple piece. The boat's not made out of leaves. It's just a regular boat, but the sails are leaves. Interesting gallery story behind this piece. I had notified my Santa Fe gallery that I was done with a piece. I was going to have it photographed, and I'll send it to them when I get that back. And the owner texted me right back and said, "Jeff, could you send a studio shot of that? I've got some people here who might be interested." And I said, okay, under protest, because my studio shots are just crap. I don't know how to photograph the work. But I sent it, and she called me back and said, yes, they're very, very interested. I think they live out by you somewhere. So I said, okay, when I get the professional shot back next week, I'll send it to you, and you can send it to them. And if they're interested, if they're near me, I can take the painting so they can see it for themselves in real life. So they did want to see it. They live just down Jan and I are in Petaluma, so we're in Sonoma. They're just down in Kentfield in Marin County. Easy drive down lovely 101. Find the house. Nice house out in the woods up on the hillside of Mount Tam. Guy comes out, introduces himself. Come on in, he says. I've got the painting with me with a piece of cardboard on it to protect it. I walk into this house and it's just full of art. I mean, right away I can see Cy Twombly, I see Miro, I see Jasper Johns, Rauschenberg, and a whole slew of artists I didn't know. Just, so he says, my wife would love to see this. She got into some bad scallops last night. She's in bed, but I'll take it to her and we'll discuss the piece. Oh, I'm wandering around this big room looking at all this art. And again, a lot of it's unfamiliar to me, but there were some big names there. Comes back sans painting, which I think is a good sign. And he says, yeah, we would love to have the piece. We want it in our collection. Great, wonderful. Wunderbar. And so he gives me a check for the full amount, and I'll pay the gallery for their share. But he says, my wife really wants it, she wants to keep it in the bedroom. I don't know what art is in the rest of the house, but she said something very nice. She said, she wants to start the day with this painting, and she wants to finish the day with this painting. And that was wonderful. I do get some remarkably heartfelt response to the work. Even lo, these many years later, people will contact me and want to tell me about the meaning of how meaningful the piece has been with them. I had a woman. Well, the Santa Fe Gallery contacted me one time and said, Jeff, there's a woman who's been in touch with us. She's been following your work for 20 years. She's now able to buy a painting. And she really likes the birds on the branches and the rope. And do you have anything right now that we might offer her? And I said, no, I don't. But look, I'll put together a painting and we can see if that might work for her. Because I love to paint, so to revisit a theme of mine again is, shit, that's great for me. I don't mind that at all. It's not a commission. It's a might be sale. So she loved the image, the photograph of the painting I did for her, the woman. She was in Colorado, and I was going to do the shipping. It didn't need to go to Santa Fe and then up to her. And on the shipping label was my telephone number. So she called me after she got the painting, and she almost couldn't talk. She was so emotional. She first saw my work like 25 years ago, and I got the impression that perhaps a husband had passed away and she was able to do something now that she'd wanted to do for many, many years. So again, it was that human response to the work that I just cherish, and I just keep with me all the time. And the way that people loved this piece, it was just very, very meaningful. I don't have any contact except in episodes like this with the people that buy my work. I do get stories and from the galleries about what people say about the work. But every once in a while, I do get that firsthand experience, and it's just remarkable for me. Well, there's Leaving Autumn, which was on the flyer for this talk. I have no idea what to say about this piece. just an explosion of leaves on the old pomegranate. And again, this piece it sold very, very quickly out of the Atlanta Gallery. Now, I was going to tell you a story about the Atlanta Gallery. I've been with them for at least a dozen years. And there was the owner of the gallery, and there were two gallerists, two women who I realized were just some of the best gallerists I've ever experienced. They loved my work. They were very protective of it. They got it into many, many collections. And through a series of events, one of them was let go, unduly let go, because the owner needed more presence in the gallery, so she had to get rid of someone. The other woman lasted about a week, and then she left too because of what had happened to the young director who was let go. Well, I'm faced with this dilemma of being in a gallery with a complete stranger now who did this to the two women who had guided my work through all sorts of wonderful things. So I told them, the two women, if you ever do anything, I will follow you, without question. So that's what's happened. I left the gallery after 12 years. Any day now, the two women will have their own gallery, these two wonderful gallerists, and I'll be back with them and them handling my work in their own gallery. And it wasn't a hard decision to make. It was a pain in the butt because the owner was giving me some issues about leaving. But I couldn't stay. I didn't want to be there anymore. I wanted to be with Tiffany and Ann and how they feel about my work and how I feel about them. So it's out of that came this brand new adventure that's unfolding as we speak. I tell you, having good gallerists is beyond measure. I've had two galleries in my younger days, thank God, go bankrupt, owing me money, and God damn, that was when money was scarce, and you don't forget that kind of stuff. That stays with you, and over the years, I've learned a whole lot about reading the wind, as it were. It's a really sweet piece. Just a nice alignment of things I refer to again and again. This painting went through quite a few various alterations. I think there's about 47 different background colors on this piece. And of course, I decided to change the background color after everything in the foreground is done. So, but it's good meditative time. Well, I know what I'm doing today, But I've gotten pretty good at repainting background colors when needed around everything in the foreground. The spheres appearing randomly in these pieces, again, it's just a very satisfying image for me. I don't know what they do, but boy, it works for me, and it just sort of seals it up. This piece was in Santa Fe, and Nancy called me one day, said, "Jeff, I've got these people that just really, really want this painting, but they're going to have to pay it off over time," which means that it would be at the gallery until it's paid off. And she said, "Well, they need about a year." whoa, a year. But that's the only time it's been that long. I don't mind, it's not a problem for me if someone really wants a piece, but they kept paying it when they could. They made monthly installments, and I think at the end they had a bit of a flourish, and they could pay it off quickly. I mean, before the year was completely up. But they desperately wanted this painting. So they got it. And it was, both Nancy and I were in agreement that that's fine. I don't mind if someone shows such an interest in a piece and it means that much to them, then it certainly is not an issue for me. There's that eucalyptus branch again. No birds in this one. But again, the boat, the feather sails, not the boat, just the, and again, it's just a skyscape for me. It's deeply satisfying to do, and upon completion, I really get a good sense of fulfillment from this. Just another sort of steady part of my output. Sometimes, if I'm a little lost at what to work on, I can put a canvas on the easel and just start in on a skyscape, and I can, that takes me in all sorts of different thought processes. So I'm back to thinking, but it's a subject I'm well used to. I mean, there's a billion ways to do a sky, and the leaves. My God, the leaves. Sometimes trying to get the spontaneous look of the leaves is the hardest part. You want to be spontaneous, but my God, it doesn't work. You have to juggle and place. I tape leaves to the canvas to see if this will work here. Just good. I've done a number of bird saints in the past. I like the concept of time. Oh yeah. Here I am prattling on. Jeez. Okay, bird saints. I've done a number of them. We can chat later about it. By now, these are sort of self-explanatory. They're sort of self-portraits. Let's see. This is the painting that the woman was so distraught over and walked into the Natchez Gallery to ask if Stacy knew my name. So this is what she ended up with eventually. I love the wandering potted trees. I love that imagery. Oh, this one, I'll be quick. This piece just was requested from the Hunter Museum of American Art in Chattanooga. It was in the Atlanta Gallery, and they wanted it for a big sale, a fundraising sale at the museum, and I just found out Monday morning that it had sold. So that's great news. They do a lot of wonderful outreach programs. We'll just sort of wrap up here. This painting was based on a photograph one of my nieces took in England. I gave her a cut of the sale price. Not very much, but yeah, I did. Okay, I think we can, the sound of ancient rain, we can end any time if you're, okay. A lot of stories, but, you know, we'll get there. Ah, there's a eucalyptus boat. And one more. That's it. Okay.
Thank you.
We did it.
We did it. Thank you so much, Jeff, for sharing your work with us, and many, many thanks for your,
Oh, pleasure.
your effort making your special trip down here. We really appreciate it.
Have me back. We'll finish.
Yeah.